Back to politics. Joining us now, Congressman Ted Poe, Republican from Texas. Congressman Poe, you resigned from the Freedom Caucus after the health care bill failed. I want to welcome to the program. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Will the Freedom Caucus stand in the way of tax reform? Are they going to hold it up or stop it? What do you say?
Well, it's not sure. I'm not sure where they'll be on that. The Obamacare repeal, the repeal bill had massive tax cuts, repealed the Obama tax cuts. Now we're stuck with the Obama taxes. When we get to tax cuts in general in the Republican caucus, it'll be interesting to see where the Freedom Caucus stands. Of course, I want tax cuts. I'm not sure that we will get there because the tax system is so complicated that it may be very difficult to repeal even the simple parts of the tax code.
Have you had private conversations with other members of the Freedom Caucus? And are they responding to, I'm going to say, the hostility towards them after the failure of the health care reform bill?
I have talked to members of the caucus. I was one of the original members of the Freedom Caucus. But the Freedom Caucus wanted a seat at the table. It's a conservative group. And we got that seat at the table on the health care bill. President Trump met with us for over an hour and a half. And changes kept being made that the Freedom Caucus proposed. 5 changes. And finally it got to the point where it was pretty clear that the Freedom Caucus as a group would never vote for the health care repeal bill. And they had enough members that would refuse to vote to repeal it, repeal the Obamacare and have the new bill, that it would keep legislation from being passed. So I have talked to them about that because we got to get to the point where we're going to say yes.
Yes.
We're in the leadership, and that's our job.
You've got to be a governing party. You've been in I mean, it's all very well and good to be the party of opposition, but when you hold the House, the Senate, and the White House, you've got to govern. I mean, what would be the sticking point in tax reform for the Freedom Caucus?
The sticking point may be that the tax cuts aren't enough, and so they haven't really come up with a plan on the tax cuts because the tax cut or the tax bill has not been formulated yet. But there's some discussion about whether or not the tax cuts will go far enough. So it will be interesting to see where the Freedom Caucus stands on that. But eventually, we have got to lead. And we have to lead in tax cuts as well.
Well, it's the centerpiece of the growth agenda. If you don't get a tax cut this year, if you don't go through with it, I mean, then the growth agenda is in shreds. So let me ask you this question. Do you, sir, expect at the end of the day, at some point this year, we will get meaningful cuts in individual tax rates, corporate tax rates? Will we get that?
I believe that we will. We will be able to reduce the corporate tax rate first and then the individual tax rate second and make the taxes overall simpler. I hope we can do that and get a consensus in the Republican Party to do that, to lead to reduce the massive taxes that are on the American public.
Okay, one last one, if I may. Attorney General Jeff Sessions is going after sanctuary cities, trying to take funds away from sanctuary cities. I take it that you agree with that, and the Freedom Caucus would agree with that? There's no problem with Republicans in Congress about this?
Certainly. Cities must follow the law just like individuals. And when cities refuse to cooperate to deport criminal aliens, people who have committed crimes in this country, there should be some consequences. And those consequences, you don't get federal grants for that city, especially in law enforcement. So I agree with that. I think that we will be able to get that legislation through the House of Representatives and get it on over to the Senate.
Real fast, if I may, have you heard anything from your constituents about leaving the Freedom Caucus?
Most of my constituents are very supportive. I am an individual and a conservative, and they support the idea that the Freedom Caucus, a good bunch of folks, should have been supportive of repealing Obamacare and replacing it. So I have gotten more favorable than unfavorable.
Okay. Good. Congressman Ted Poe, thanks very much for being with us this morning. Much appreciated, sir. Thank you.